What's good? Colby here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about something that has come up a lot in the last few days. And honestly, it's kind of messed with me like mentally. It's kind of fucked me up a little bit. And it is this idea that entrepreneurs looking at job postings. And my mind immediately was curious about that because if you are someone who is running your own business, and as we know, it's inherently a hard thing to do. Somebody once told me that running your own business is just signing up to get kicked in the shins all the time. And yeah, that's how it can feel 100%, especially if you feel like you're lacking clarity or you feel like you don't have support. I mean, it is one of the most isolating things you can choose. And so I wanted to talk specifically though on this idea of an entrepreneur who is looking at job postings occasionally, right? Because all of us came from somewhere. Very few of us left high school and never had a real job, right? Many of us had a real job for several years, maybe even decades, and then started our own thing. And so it's this whole idea of going back, right? And it's really interesting to me because since I started my business in earnest, January 1st, I mean, I left a business I had built for 9 years, got to multi seven figures. I mean, if you don't know who I am, like I have spent 14 years in the digital marketing world. I've served over 1,200 clients, and now I coach entrepreneurs, typically agency owners, solopreneurs, and freelancers, to just help them scale. And I help them scale with flow, right? Versus like hustle, which is more or less what the world is prescribing. When I went in for my business, I more or less like haven't had a single day where I thought I can go back. And so I'm fascinated by this because I've heard it a lot this week of entrepreneurs looking at job postings. And they will say in conversations, well, I'm really scared. There's so much I don't know. I'm afraid of looking stupid. I have imposter syndrome where it's like, yeah, I actually have some pretty good things, but do I deserve these things? And just kind of all the things that go with it, right? So if you're feeling any of those things, instead of just yelling at you and saying, you got to go all in, I think you know it. Like, I think you know you need to go all in. But the opinion I have on this is not that it's a failure problem, that your business won't succeed problem, that you don't know what you're doing problem. It's none of those things. I don't think it's any of those things. Like, honestly, I've signed my last two clients by telling them before they paid me, I was like, nobody knows what they're doing, me included, right? But the difference is we don't let that stop us from doing things. Yeah. And if you have a business, you're successful, you're doing things, you're doing something, but you can't like shake these things in your head, or the thoughts that lead to the behavior of looking on LinkedIn job postings and being like, maybe I could go make the same amount or just slightly less and not have to think at all about all the pressure and getting kicked in the shins and having a massive tax bill and all that kind of stuff from just like the little tiny death by 1,000 paper cuts that a business can provide, your own business, right? We all have heard of like Hernan Cortez, right? The man who, once he set foot in the New World, more or less, he burned all of his boats. They were not going back to Spain, right? They did not have an exit plan. And so having this be a really prominent thought and knowing that homeboy Cortez had that mindset, what I did was I basically went into Chat GPT and said, let's picture Hernan Cortez as a 2025 entrepreneur speaking on stage at a conference full of other entrepreneurs. And someone from the crowd says, it's hard. I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm thinking about going back to the job market. So yes, this is what ChatGPT spit out. I would consider myself pretty decent at like kind of evoking these weird conversations with GPT. But instead of summarizing it, like let me actually read to you what it came out with. Here's the full prompt I put in. Let's say Cortez was living in modern day. He's an entrepreneur, and well, we know how Cortez is. Say he's speaking at a conference and someone from the crowd says, it's hard, scary, and I'm thinking about going back to the job market. Now, Cortez was a fiery character, pun intended. And even in 2025, he wouldn't be afraid of getting canceled because he has clear conviction and strong beliefs. So what would entrepreneur Cortez say to this person that would put the fear of God in them and keep them from ever speaking like that again? All right. So this is GPT then sets the scene. It's like, hey, I love that, Colby. This is really interesting, that sort of stuff. Um, it says Cortez would be the entrepreneur in 2025 who would walk on stage without slides, no safety net, and make the whole room question their comfort. He wouldn't mince words. He'd speak like fire wrapped in truth. So it says Cortez would pause, step to the edge of the stage, lock eyes with this person, and then deliver something like this. Cortez would say, hard? Scary? You say that like it's news. You didn't sign up for safety. You signed up for sovereignty. You thought building something that belongs to you would feel like an HR orientation? The problem isn't that it's hard. The problem is that you keep fantasizing that it shouldn't be. You're standing on the beach, staring back at the ships, wondering if you should paddle home when you haven't even set foot in the jungle yet. And you know what's waiting for you if you turn around? A paycheck, predictable hours, permission slips to dream small. You think that's safety? It's just a slower death. You say it's scary. Of course it is. Every inch of freedom you gain is wrestled from the part of you that would rather be liked, approved of, or told what to do. You're not fighting the market, you're fighting your own comfort. So burn your damn ships. Stop pretending there's a way back, because the moment you truly believe there's no rescue party coming, that's the moment you'll finally start acting like the captain you were meant to be, which is fire. Again, so many puns here, but absolutely. And then it said, and what if someone asked him afterwards why he was so harsh? And these words hit me dead in the face when I read these and just like resonated so much. He would say, because no one builds an empire with an exit plan. And so I kind of want to finish with a story. Before I had even started this business, I'd considered starting a business. I was still at my agency. I was in like year 8 of the agency. I'd finally gotten it down from 70-hour weeks down to 8 hours. We had more than doubled our business in 12 months. That took us, it took us 7 years to hit $1 million. And then in 12 months, we went from 1 million to 2.5 million. And that was the exact same time I went from 70 hours down to 8 hours. We didn't hire anybody. We didn't run any ads. No like lead gen agency, like none of that stuff. We just did things fundamentally different than we had been doing. Everything before was just hustle and slog and saying yes to everything and accepting poor fit clients and all this stuff that is just like, if you just start putting boundaries and constraints, if you decide to burn the boats, so to speak, on there's like, we're not doing it this way anymore. We're going to commit to a new way. It was amazing. Like under 10 hours a week in the business and making twice as much for the business, more than twice as much. But around this time, I'd been contemplating my purpose. What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Because I'd been at this agency for a while and now it started feeling easy and light. And quite frankly, I started getting bored. So of course I was looking. And nothing jumped out at me, but I remember distinctly my wife and I got pregnant and we went to this for the first sonogram. And I'll tell you the full story real quick, just because it's wild. Is my wife and I had a couple miscarriages before, and so we walked in and I could see the nerves on her face. And I told her, I was just like, have you considered that everything's fine? And I kid you not, guys, she looked back at me and said, have you considered there's 2 in there? And we had never talked about the possibility of twins, ever. It was kind of nerve-wracking because we're like, we got to figure out what's going on in there because we had some not amazing experiences. Anyways, 60 seconds later, the doctor pops in. It was the same doctor who had been there for the bad times. And so he's like, I'm not even going to give you the spiel. Let's look what's going on. And so about 90 seconds, 2 minutes maybe, after my wife said, have you considered there's 2 in there? I don't know if you'd call it a procedure. It's underway. And the doctor says, well, you're not going to believe this. And I had seen it right before he mentioned his eyes, mentioned it. I saw 2 little heartbeats and I just started laughing. I started laughing. And it was one of those things where it was like, you know how your life, you can look back and you'd be like, that was the moment my life changed. And it was just me standing in this tiny little room. I think I was rubbing the doctor's shoulders and be like, what have you done? And he's like, well, technically you did this. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. And just laughing. But when we got in the car after the appointment, I even remember the specific block I was on. I remember the exact temperature it was outside. I remember how windy it was. I remember what I was wearing. All this stuff is just like so visceral. And in the car, looking out the windshield, driving home, I was like, well, I can't fail. And I tell that story because it was in that moment that even though I hadn't started my business yet, I killed any possibility that if I was ever going to start the business, that I would ever have an exit plan, ever have an option. And so maybe you haven't had that moment yet, but you don't need to have twins or this crazy life-changing event to decide that I'm not going to look at job postings anymore. I decided to do this. Maybe I have 10 years into this, at least like 1, 2, whatever. Maybe you're only 6 months in, wherever you are. You've put time into it. And the biggest possible disservice you could do for yourself is to say, well, I can always leave. You'll never get anywhere close to where you want to be if you have that mentality. Now, I want to be abundantly clear, and I kind of wrote this in a post, so I'll read an experience I had after having like the third or fourth conversation where someone was like, yeah, I check job postings pretty regularly. And it was the same day I went into an office building because I work from home. Like, I've created this dream life. Like, I do what I want. I come and go as I please. I work the hours I want. I make more money with less time than ever, right? And it's just a decision. But like, I had this visceral moment where I walked into an office to pick up some items we're doing an in-person retreat for my community next week. And I walked in there and first thought was like, wow, this is one of the most depressing places I've ever been. Like, it was just this industrial park, clearly hadn't been super well maintained. You know, the wallpaper's kind of ripping and like stained, and there's just no creativity involved in this place. Like, it was literally a box where people come to work. And I'm like, how could you even work in this environment? How could you create anything of value here? It's so depressing, but it's fine. The point is when I got in the car and I left and I wrote this out, it was like, I was saying these words to myself in the car. I was like, I can't even wrap my head around how to do that. And I used to work in an office, right? But I said things to myself. I was like, okay, you know, we have this dress code. You have to wear a polo and, you know, business casual or whatever. And in my mind, I'm like, why? Like, I'm wearing a stocking hat and have tattoos visible, right? In places I worked before, that wasn't allowed, right? Couldn't wear a hat, had to cover the tattoos. Or like, you have to drive to this office. Why? The internet is crazy available, right? You can run a 7-figure business from your phone. Like, why? Why would I have to go somewhere, right? Or you have to be present from 9 to 5. Why? Why? And yet, this place I went to, you know, it was a bunch of different offices for different businesses and stuff. And all of those people were actually their own business owners, and they chose to put it there and come to an office and do these things. And then people who were hired come to an office and do these things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm not talking to those people. I'm talking to you as a business owner. There are millions of ways to earn a living. I am not spitting in the face of going to an office and all that sort of stuff. Not at all. You have to commit to something. And the commitment is, what is the surest path to build a dream life, not a life that's okay? If you can actually see the dream life coming from an office 9 to 5 where it's not your business, then stop entrepreneurship and do it. But chances are you can't, which is probably why you started your business in the first place. And so, like GPT Cortez says, it's like, you haven't even stepped foot in the jungle yet. As you begin on the path reveals itself. You've probably already walked several steps down the path, and you're still standing here, and you still have food in your cupboards, and you still have value to give. What if the only thing that was standing in the way of you going even further and actually creating that dream life faster, at a higher level, with more fun, was deciding you're never going to look at job postings again? That is not an effing option, that they don't exist. And the only extra thing I would say with that is that's the first decision. If you decided to speed it up, then don't go alone, right? That's the decision that held me back for so long. Is like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it my way. And I didn't have a freaking clue what I was doing, even though I had built a business with help, obviously, business partners and stuff, even though I had built businesses to 7 figures and beyond. I'm personally responsible for 2 7-figure offers and 2 6-figure offers. Like, I'm not an idiot, and I still had no idea what I was doing, and I was going alone. But the first step is there is no other option. And I know you can hear the conviction in my voice right now. I hear that all the time from strangers. You have such conviction. man, you have such an energy around what you say. You know why? I can't actually picture a backup plan. I would love to tell you that I can see myself in an office. I can't. And I did that for a long time. Something I actually did is no longer even tangible in my mind. So you bet your ass, like I'm not looking at job postings, never have since I started this business. And I cannot believe how excited I am about what's coming. But let's make no mistake, running your own business is signing up to get kicked in the shins over and over and over again. It is signing up to walk into a jungle that you've never been in before with nothing but a machete and hoping for the best. But you already know what's behind you. If that's not good enough, which is why you started your business in the first place, then it's not available anymore. It just cannot be. And then the way you amplify that is say that doesn't exist. And then you say, now what do I not know? And you go find somebody who does know those things and wants to walk forward with you. I'm not saying get a business partner and give away 50% of your profit and your revenue and your equity. I'm saying find somebody who you can pay, who's been where you want to go, who knows the steps one step at a time, who believes in you all along the way and will hold you accountable so you never fall backwards and be like, but the beach, the ships. I'm dead serious. This is the only thing you need to accept, because when you accept that there is no other plan, you will find a way to make it work. When we were having twins, there was no possible way I could fail. I had to make it work. So what do you need to do? What is the thing that makes you look at job postings? What is the thought in the back of your head that says, I'm not cut out for this? Nobody knows what they're doing, but the people you're inspired by burned the boats a long effing time ago. So I hope this video helps. Thank you so much for watching. If you want more from me, by all means, hit subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.